Question 1. Benchmark analysis indicates that a candidate for the Nazarene University entrance examination is observed by an invigilator to be discreetly looking at notes hidden in their sleeve during the examination. The invigilator is aware of the university's strict policy against any form of academic dishonesty. What is the most appropriate and ethically sound course of action for the invigilator to take in this situation? Option A. Ignore the observation to avoid causing a scene and potentially disrupting other candidates, and address it informally after the examination. Option B. Ask the candidate to stop looking at their sleeve and then continue monitoring the rest of the hall without further action unless the behavior repeats. Option C. Issue a verbal warning to the candidate and allow them to continue the examination, assuming it was a minor lapse in judgment. Option D. Immediately confiscate the candidate's examination materials, discreetly escort the candidate out of the examination hall, and report the incident to the examination board for further investigation according to university policy. Correct answer is D. Immediately confiscate the candidate's examination materials, discreetly escort the candidate out of the examination hall, and report the incident to the examination board for further investigation according to university policy. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Navigating this requires a strong understanding of ethical principles and the university's specific regulations regarding academic misconduct. The challenge lies in upholding these standards, while also recognizing the pressures students face. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a direct and honest engagement with the examination process, adhering strictly to the rules and guidelines provided by Nazarene University. This means relying solely on one's own knowledge and understanding, without seeking or utilizing any unauthorized assistance. This approach is ethically sound as it upholds principles of honesty, fairness, and integrity, which are foundational to academic institutions. It aligns with the university's commitment to assessing genuine academic potential and ensuring a level playing field for all candidates. Incorrect approach is analysis. Seeking or utilizing unauthorized external information during the exam is a direct violation of academic integrity policies. This undermines the purpose of the examination, which is to assess individual merit. It is unethical because it constitutes cheating, creating an unfair advantage over other candidates who adhere to the rules. Such actions erode trust in the examination process and the qualifications awarded by the university. Sharing exam content with others before or after the exam, or discussing specific questions with individuals who have not yet taken it, also constitutes academic misconduct. This compromises the security and validity of the examination for future candidates. It is unethical as it facilitates further breaches of academic integrity and undermines the fairness of the assessment process for the entire cohort. Failing to report observed instances of academic misconduct by other candidates, when there is a clear university policy requiring such reporting, is also an ethical failure. While it may seem like avoiding confrontation, it implicitly condones unethical behavior and allows it to persist, thereby weakening the overall academic environment and the credibility of the institution. Professional reasoning. Professionals in academic settings, including invigilators and administrators, must prioritize upholding the integrity of the examination process. This involves a commitment to fairness, honesty, and adherence to established regulations. When faced with situations that could compromise these values, the decision-making process should involve 1. Clearly understanding the university's specific policies on academic integrity and examination conduct. 2. Evaluating the situation against these established rules and ethical principles. 3. Taking decisive action that aligns with the university's regulations and promotes a fair and honest assessment environment. 4. Prioritizing the long-term reputation and credibility of the institution. Question 2. Benchmark analysis indicates that during the Nazarene University entrance examination, an invigilator observes a candidate discreetly using a mobile phone to access information. The invigilator is aware of the university's strict policy against electronic devices during examinations and the severe penalties for academic dishonesty. What is the most appropriate course of action for the invigilator to uphold the integrity of the examination process? Option A. discreetly signal to the candidate to put the phone away and continue monitoring the rest of the candidates. Option B. Ignore the incident, assuming it was a minor lapse in judgment that will not significantly impact the overall fairness of the exam. Option C. Approach the candidate privately after the examination and advise them to withdraw their application to avoid future repercussions. Option D. Immediately confiscate the phone, escort the candidate out of the examination hall, and report the incident to the examination board according to university protocol. Correct answer is D. Immediately confiscate the phone, escort the candidate out of the examination hall, and report the incident to the examination board according to university protocol. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams, especially for competitive programs, can lead some students to seek unethical advantages. Nazarene University, like any reputable institution, has established regulations and ethical guidelines to ensure a fair and transparent admission process. Navigating this situation requires a deep understanding of these principles and the ability to apply them judiciously. The correct approach involves upholding the integrity of the examination process by reporting the observed misconduct. This aligns with the university's regulatory framework, which mandates that all individuals involved in the admissions process, including invigilators, must act with honesty and report any breaches of academic integrity. Ethically, this upholds the principle of fairness to all applicants who have prepared diligently and honestly. Reporting ensures that the university's standards are maintained and that admissions are based on merit, not on deceit. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed misconduct. This failure to act directly violates the university's regulations regarding invigilator responsibilities and academic integrity. Ethically, it condones dishonest behavior and undermines the fairness of the entire admission process, disadvantaging honest applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to confront the student directly and demand they withdraw. While seemingly proactive, this bypasses the established university procedures for handling academic misconduct. It could lead to an escalation of the situation, potential accusations of harassment, and may not result in a formal, documented resolution that upholds the university's standards. The university's disciplinary procedures are designed to ensure due process and consistent application of rules. A third incorrect approach would be to subtly hint to the student that their actions are noticed without formally reporting. This is a passive and ineffective response. It fails to address the root issue of academic dishonesty and does not fulfill the invigilator's duty to report. It leaves the university unaware of the misconduct and unable to take appropriate action, thus compromising the integrity of the entrance examination. Professionals in such situations should follow a clear decision-making process. 1. Identify the observed behavior and compare it against established university regulations and ethical codes of conduct. 2. Recognize the duty to report any suspected or observed breaches of these regulations. 3. Follow the prescribed university procedures for reporting academic misconduct, ensuring all details are documented accurately and objectively. 4. Avoid personal judgment or direct intervention that is outside the scope of their defined role, unless specifically instructed to do so by university policy. 5. Trust the university's established disciplinary mechanisms to handle the reported matter fairly and impartially. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that during the Nazarene University entrance examination, a proctor observes a candidate discreetly looking at notes concealed within their sleeve. According to the Nazarene University's regulatory framework for entrance examinations, what is the most appropriate course of action for the proctor to take? Option A. Offer the candidate a brief, private explanation of the rules regarding academic honesty after the examination has concluded. Option B. Immediately confiscate the candidate's examination paper and escort them out of the examination hall without further interaction. Option C. Ignore the observation, assuming it was a minor lapse in concentration and unlikely to affect the overall integrity of the examination. Option D. Discreetly approach the candidate, inform them that their actions have been observed, and instruct them to cease the behavior and return their attention to the examination paper. The correct answer is B. Immediately confiscate the candidate's examination paper and escort them out of the examination hall without further interaction. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's immediate academic needs and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment practices. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams can lead students to seek unauthorized assistance, which undermines the validity of the assessment process and the university's reputation. Navigating this requires a careful balance between supporting students and upholding institutional standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the Nazarene University stated examination regulation. This means ensuring that all candidates are aware of and comply with the rules regarding academic honesty, including prohibitions against any form of cheating or unauthorized assistance. The university's regulatory framework for entrance exams is designed to ensure a fair and equitable evaluation of all applicants' capabilities. Upholding these regulations is paramount to maintaining the integrity of the admissions process and the academic standards of the institution. This approach prioritizes fairness, transparency, and the ethical conduct expected of all individuals interacting with the university. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to overlook or downplay minor instances of suspected rule breaking, assuming they are insignificant. This fails to uphold the university's commitment to academic integrity and could set a precedent for future violations. It directly contravenes the spirit and letter of examination regulations that demand strict adherence to all rules. Another incorrect approach would be to offer personalized, unauthorized assistance to a student who appears to be struggling, even if it is framed as help. This constitutes a breach of impartiality and fairness, as it provides an unfair advantage to one candidate over others. It violates the principle of equal opportunity in assessment and undermines the objective evaluation process. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore a student's direct request for clarification on exam content during the examination period, without referring them to the appropriate proctor or invigilator. While the intention might be to avoid providing answers, a complete lack of guidance on procedural matters or where to seek help can be perceived as unsupportive and may inadvertently disadvantage the student, while also not directly addressing the integrity of the exam itself. The regulations typically outline the proper channels for addressing student queries during an exam. Professional reasoning. Professionals in an educational setting must adopt a proactive and principled stance. This involves a thorough understanding of the institution's regulatory framework, including examination policies and codes of conduct. When faced with situations that could compromise academic integrity, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the relevant regulations and ethical principles at play. 2. Assessing the situation objectively against these standards. 3. Taking appropriate action that is consistent with the regulations and upholds fairness and integrity. 4. Documenting actions taken and seeking guidance from supervisors or relevant authorities when necessary. The ultimate goal is to ensure that all processes are conducted ethically and in accordance with established institutional guidelines. Question 4. Process analysis reveals that an applicant to Nazarene University's entrance exam presents a strong academic record, but also exhibits a perceived need for financial assistance, as indicated by a brief, unsolicited mention in their personal statement. The admissions committee is tasked with evaluating this applicant. According to the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines specified for the Nazarene University entrance exam, which of the following approaches should the committee adopt? Option A. Consider the applicant's perceived financial need as a significant factor in the admissions decision, potentially offering a slight advantage to ensure diversity. Option B. Prioritize the applicant due to a personal recommendation from a senior faculty member who believes the applicant would benefit greatly from the university's programs. Option C. Evaluate the applicant solely based on the academic qualifications and other criteria explicitly defined in the Nazarene University entrance exam guidelines, disregarding any information not directly related to these established criteria. Option D. Adjust the applicant's overall score to reflect their perceived potential for future contributions to the university, even if this potential is not explicitly measured by the exam's criteria. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the applicant solely based on the academic qualifications and other criteria explicitly defined in the Nazarene University entrance exam guidelines, disregarding any information not directly related to these established criteria. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's need for accurate admissions data with the ethical obligation to ensure fairness and prevent discrimination. The admissions committee must adhere strictly to the Africa Nazarene University's established admission policies and guidelines, which are the sole regulatory framework governing this entrance exam. Any deviation from these policies, or the introduction of external, non-specified criteria, would constitute a breach of the exam's jurisdiction. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's submitted documents against the predefined academic and non-academic criteria outlined in the Africa Nazarene University's entrance exam guidelines. This ensures that all applicants are assessed impartially based on the same set of standards, upholding the integrity of the admissions process and complying with the university's internal regulations. This method is ethically sound as it promotes equal opportunity and transparency. An incorrect approach would be to consider the applicant's perceived financial background. This introduces an external, subjective, and potentially discriminatory factor not stipulated in the Africa Nazarene University's entrance exam regulations. Such consideration would violate the principle of merit-based admissions and could lead to unfair outcomes, undermining the credibility of the university selection process. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize applicants based on personal recommendations from faculty members, unless these recommendations are explicitly part of the university's stated admission criteria for this specific exam. Introducing subjective influence not sanctioned by the official guidelines compromises the objectivity of the assessment and deviates from the established regulatory framework. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to adjust the applicant's score based on their perceived potential for future success, without a clear, predefined, and universally applied metric for assessing such potential within the university's entrance exam guidelines. This introduces an element of speculation and bias, moving away from the objective evaluation mandated by the exam's regulatory framework. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical principles. This involves 1. Understanding and strictly applying the specific regulatory framework of the Africa Nazarene University entrance exam. 2. Evaluating all applicants based on objective, predefined criteria. 3. Maintaining transparency and fairness throughout the process. 4. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them, ensuring accountability. Question 5. The performance metrics show a statistically significant decline in the pass rates for introductory science courses across multiple departments over the past 2 academic years. This trend is observed across different teaching methodologies and faculty members, suggesting a potential systemic issue rather than isolated incidents. The university's academic board is concerned about the implications for student progression and the overall academic reputation of the institution. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response by the university administration? Option A. Implement mandatory remedial tutoring for all students enrolled in introductory science courses, regardless of their current performance, to proactively address potential academic challenges. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive review of the curriculum, teaching methodologies, and student support services for introductory science courses, involving faculty, academic advisors, and student representatives, to identify root causes and propose evidence-based interventions. Option C. Immediately revise the grading scale for introductory science courses to lower the threshold for passing, thereby improving the observed pass rates and mitigating concerns about student progression. Option D. Publicly acknowledge the decline in pass rates and attribute it to external factors such as increased student workload from other programs, without further internal investigation. The correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive review of the curriculum, teaching methodologies, and student support services for introductory science courses, involving faculty, academic advisors, and student representatives, to identify root causes and propose evidence-based interventions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's stated commitment to academic integrity with the practical pressures of student retention and institutional reputation. The performance metrics, while indicating a potential issue, do not automatically dictate a specific course of action without further investigation and adherence to established university policies. The challenge lies in ensuring that any response is fair, transparent, and upholds the principles of due process, as mandated by the Nazarene University's academic regulations and ethical guidelines for student assessment. The correct approach involves a thorough, evidence-based review of the performance metrics in conjunction with the university's established academic integrity policies. This means investigating the specific circumstances behind the observed trends, considering potential systemic issues, and engaging with relevant academic departments and student support services. The justification for this approach is rooted in the university's commitment to fairness and due process. Nazarene University's academic regulations likely stipulate clear procedures for addressing academic performance concerns, including opportunities for students to explain their situation and for the university to provide support. Ethically, this approach prioritizes student welfare and development while upholding academic standards. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement punitive measures based solely on the aggregated performance metrics without individual assessment. This fails to acknowledge that performance metrics are indicators, not definitive proof of misconduct or academic failure. Such an approach would violate the principles of natural justice and the university's own procedural safeguards, potentially leading to unfair outcomes for students. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the metrics altogether, which would be a dereliction of the university's responsibility to monitor academic standards and provide timely interventions. This would undermine the credibility of the academic programs and fail to support students who may be struggling. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic review of available data, consultation with relevant stakeholders, e.g., academic deans, faculty, student affairs, adherence to established university policies and procedures, and a commitment to fairness and transparency. Professionals must consider the ethical implications of their decisions, ensuring that they align with the institution's values and regulatory framework. Question 6. The audit findings indicate that certain sections of the Nazarene University entrance examination materials may have inadvertently contained information that could be perceived as providing an unfair advantage to some candidates, potentially compromising the integrity of the assessment. The audit team has flagged this as a significant concern, requiring immediate attention. Which of the following actions best addresses the audit findings while upholding the principles of academic integrity and fairness for all prospective students? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the specific examination sections identified in the audit to determine the nature and extent of the potential advantage, and based on the findings, implement targeted remedial actions such as re-evaluating affected candidates or, if necessary, re-administering the compromised sections. Option B. Issue a general statement to all candidates acknowledging a minor administrative oversight and proceed with the original examination results without further investigation or action. Option C. Instruct the examination committee to discreetly remove the flagged information from future examination preparation materials without addressing the current examination's validity. Option D. Immediately nullify the entire entrance examination for all candidates and reschedule a new examination to ensure absolute fairness, regardless of the specific impact of the identified issues. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the specific examination sections identified in the audit to determine the nature and extent of the potential advantage, and based on the findings, implement targeted remedial actions such as re-evaluating affected candidates or, if necessary, re-administering the compromised sections. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between academic integrity and the need to provide constructive feedback. The university entrance exam is designed to assess a candidate's foundational knowledge and critical thinking skills. The audit findings suggest a deviation from the intended assessment process, potentially compromising the fairness and validity of the entrance examination. Careful judgment is required to address the findings without undermining the integrity of the admissions process or unfairly penalizing candidates. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the examination materials and the identified irregularities to determine the extent of the compromise. This includes assessing whether the identified issues could have significantly influenced candidate performance or the overall assessment of their suitability for admission. Based on this assessment, a decision must be made regarding the appropriate remedial action, which could range from re-evaluating specific sections to, in severe cases, nullifying the examination and rescheduling. This approach aligns with the principles of academic integrity and fairness, ensuring that all candidates are assessed on a level playing field and that the university admits students based on genuine merit. The Nazarene University's regulatory framework, as implied by an entrance exam context, would prioritize fairness, transparency, and the upholding of academic standards. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the audit findings without proper investigation. This fails to uphold the university's responsibility to ensure the integrity of its admissions process and could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates or the rejection of deserving ones. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately nullify the entire examination without a nuanced assessment of the impact of the irregularities. This could unfairly penalize candidates who may have performed well despite the issues and could lead to significant logistical and administrative challenges. A third incorrect approach would be to implement minor, superficial changes without addressing the root cause of the audit findings, thus leaving the system vulnerable to similar issues in the future. These incorrect approaches demonstrate a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to the ethical obligations of maintaining a fair and robust admission system. Professionals should approach such situations by first gathering all relevant facts, understanding the scope and impact of any identified issues, and then consulting the relevant university policies and ethical guidelines. A systematic and objective evaluation process is crucial, followed by a decision-making framework that prioritizes fairness, transparency, and the long-term integrity of the institution. Question 7. Upon reviewing the examination hall rules for the Nazarene University entrance exam, a candidate notices that a small, folded piece of paper has fallen out of another candidate's pocket. Upon closer inspection, it appears to contain handwritten notes that could be answers to potential exam questions. The invigilator is momentarily distracted. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the observing candidate? Option A. Casually mention to the other candidate that something has fallen from their pocket, hoping they will retrieve it discreetly. Option B. Ignore the situation and focus solely on their own exam to avoid any potential involvement or disruption. Option C. Pick up the paper and examine it to confirm its contents before deciding what to do. Option D. Discreetly inform the invigilator about the observed paper and its potential contents without drawing undue attention to the other candidate. The correct answer is D. Discreetly inform the invigilator about the observed paper and its potential contents without drawing undue attention to the other candidate. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve a desired outcome. The university entrance exam at Nazarene University is designed to assess a candidate's genuine understanding and aptitude. Introducing external assistance, even if perceived as minor, undermines the fairness and validity of the assessment process. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of academic honesty and ensure that all candidates are evaluated on their own merits. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the examination rules and regulations as stipulated by Nazarene University. This means ensuring that no unauthorized materials or assistance are used during the exam. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with the regulatory framework of academic institutions, which prioritizes fair evaluation and the prevention of academic misconduct. By refusing to provide or accept any form of unauthorized aid, the candidate upholds the integrity of the examination and demonstrates respect for the assessment process. Providing or accepting a pre-written answer or a crib sheet constitutes academic dishonesty. This directly violates the examination regulations of Nazarene University, which prohibit the use of unauthorized aids. Such actions undermine the credibility of the exam and can lead to severe penalties, including disqualification. Discussing exam content with other candidates before or after the exam, if it involves sharing specific questions or answers, also breaches academic integrity. A general discussion about the exam's difficulty or topics might be permissible. Sharing specific details that could give an unfair advantage to others is unethical and against the spirit of a standardized assessment. This can be seen as a form of collusion. Ignoring the rules and proceeding with the exam while possessing unauthorized materials, even if not actively used, still represents a failure to comply with the examination's regulatory framework. The mere possession of such items can be considered an attempt to gain an unfair advantage, and universities typically have strict policies against this. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a clear understanding of the institution's academic integrity policies and examination rules. Candidates should prioritize honesty and fairness above all else. If faced with a situation where rules are unclear or there is temptation to bend them, the professional approach is to err on the side of caution, seek clarification from invigilators, and strictly adhere to the stated regulations. The long-term consequences of academic dishonesty far outweigh any perceived short-term benefit. Question 8. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a lucrative partnership with a company known for questionable labor practices could significantly boost the university's endowment fund, allowing for much-needed infrastructure upgrades and increased scholarship opportunities. However, this partnership could also lead to public criticism and damage the university's reputation as a socially responsible institution. Considering the university's mission to foster ethical leadership and community engagement, what is the most prudent course of action? Option A. Proceed with the partnership but establish a separate fund for ethical initiatives to offset any negative perceptions, without directly confronting the company's practices. Option B. Negotiate stricter ethical clauses with the company and implement a robust public relations campaign to mitigate potential criticism before accepting the partnership. Option C. Reject the partnership outright due to the potential ethical and reputational risks, even though it means foregoing significant financial gains and delaying important university improvements. Option D. Accept the partnership, focusing on the immediate financial benefits and the positive impact on students through improved facilities and scholarships, while downplaying the company's practices. The correct answer is D. Accept the partnership, focusing on the immediate financial benefits and the positive impact on students through improved facilities and scholarships, while downplaying the company's practices. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate financial benefits of a proposed project against potential long-term ethical and reputational risks, particularly within the context of a university environment. The decision-maker must consider not only the quantifiable gains, but also the intangible values that are central to an academic institution's mission. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of financial advantage does not compromise the university's integrity or its commitment to its students and community. The correct approach involves prioritizing the university's core values and ethical commitments over immediate financial gains when a conflict arises. This means conducting a thorough assessment of the potential negative impacts of the partnership, including any ethical concerns or reputational damage, and ensuring that these are adequately addressed or that the partnership is rejected if they cannot be mitigated. This aligns with the ethical principles expected of educational institutions, which emphasize responsible stewardship of resources and maintaining public trust. The regulatory framework for universities, while not explicitly detailed here, generally mandates adherence to ethical standards and responsible governance, which would support this cautious and value-driven approach. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the financial benefits without adequately considering the ethical implications. This might involve overlooking potential conflicts of interest, downplaying reputational risks, or assuming that any financial gain is inherently beneficial. Such an approach fails to uphold the university's ethical obligations and could lead to long-term damage to its reputation and stakeholder relationships. Another incorrect approach would be to proceed with the partnership without a comprehensive due diligence process, assuming that the stated benefits are guaranteed and that no unforeseen ethical issues will arise. This demonstrates a lack of professional diligence and a failure to anticipate potential negative consequences, which is contrary to responsible decision-making in any organizational context, especially within an educational institution. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the objectives and constraints. This involves identifying all stakeholders and their potential interests. Next, they should gather comprehensive information, including both quantitative data and qualitative assessments of ethical and reputational factors. The evaluation of options should then weigh the potential benefits against the risks, with a strong emphasis on ethical considerations and alignment with the organization's mission and values. Finally, the decision should be transparent and justifiable, with clear documentation of the reasoning process. Question 9. The assessment process reveals that a prospective student applying for admission to Africa Nazarene University has submitted a request for a modified examination format for the entrance exam, citing a learning disability. The student has provided a letter from a medical practitioner outlining the nature of the disability, but has not specified the exact nature of the modification required. The admissions committee is tasked with deciding how to proceed. Option A. Initiate a formal review process to assess the validity of the disability claim and determine appropriate, reasonable accommodations in consultation with the university's disability support services, ensuring the integrity of the examination is maintained. Option B. Grant the student's request for a modified examination format immediately, assuming the medical letter is sufficient evidence of need. Option C. Reject the request outright, stating that the entrance examination format cannot be altered for any applicant. Option D. Ask the student to withdraw their application, as accommodating learning disabilities during the entrance exam is not standard practice. Correct answer is A. Initiate a formal review process to assess the validity of the disability claim and determine appropriate, reasonable accommodations in consultation with the university's disability support services, ensuring the integrity of the examination is maintained. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for accommodation and the university's commitment to fair and standardized assessment practices. The pressure to ensure all students have an equitable opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge, while upholding the integrity of the entrance examination, requires careful judgment. The university must balance its duty of care to students with disabilities against the need for a consistent and objective evaluation process that is fair to all applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough, individualized review of the student's request, supported by appropriate documentation, to determine if a reasonable accommodation can be provided without compromising the academic integrity of the examination. This aligns with the principles of fairness and equity enshrined in the Africa Nazarene University's commitment to inclusive education and its adherence to national guidelines on disability support in higher education. Such a process ensures that accommodations are granted based on genuine need and are designed to level the playing field, not to provide an unfair advantage. This approach respects the student's rights while maintaining the validity of the entrance exam as a measure of academic readiness. An incorrect approach would be to immediately grant the requested accommodation without proper verification. This fails to uphold the principle of fairness to other applicants who are not receiving similar adjustments and could undermine the credibility of the entrance examination. It also risks setting a precedent that could be exploited. Another incorrect approach is to summarily dismiss the request without a proper review process. This would be discriminatory and a failure to comply with the university's obligations to support students with disabilities, potentially violating ethical guidelines and national policies on equal access to education. Finally, making a decision based on anecdotal evidence or personal bias, rather than established procedures and documented needs, is unprofessional and ethically unsound, as it deviates from objective assessment standards. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes due process, evidence-based assessment, and adherence to institutional policies and relevant national regulations. This involves establishing clear criteria for evaluating accommodation requests, ensuring a transparent review process, and consulting with relevant university departments, e.g., disability services, academic affairs, to ensure decisions are informed and consistent. The focus should always be on achieving a balance between supporting individual needs and maintaining the integrity and fairness of the assessment. Question 10. Examination of the data shows that a prospective student applying for admission to Africa Nazarene University has submitted a compelling personal statement detailing significant family responsibilities that have impacted their preparation for the entrance examination. The student requests a modified examination format, citing these circumstances. The university's entrance examination guidelines stipulate that accommodations may be granted for documented medical conditions or disabilities, but are silent on personal hardship. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Advise the student to withdraw their application and reapply in a future intake, when they may have more time to prepare without personal distractions. Option B. Grant the student a modified examination format based on the compelling nature of their personal circumstances, as a gesture of goodwill and support. Option C. Deny the request for a modified examination format, as the university's guidelines specifically mention medical conditions and disabilities and do not include personal hardship. Option D. Initiate a formal review process to determine if the student's circumstances, while not explicitly listed, fall under a broader interpretation of special circumstances that could warrant a policy-compliant accommodation, while ensuring the integrity of the examination is maintained. The correct answer is B. Grant the student a modified examination format based on the compelling nature of their personal circumstances as a gesture of goodwill and support. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between a student's personal circumstances and the university's academic integrity policies. The admissions committee must balance empathy and support for a student facing hardship with the imperative to uphold the fairness and validity of the entrance examination process. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any accommodations made do not compromise the integrity of the assessment or create an unfair advantage. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review of the student's request, considering all available evidence, and adhering strictly to the Nazarene University's established policies on special accommodations for entrance examinations. This approach is right because it prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to institutional regulations. By following established procedures, the committee ensures that decisions are consistent, justifiable, and defensible, thereby protecting the integrity of the admissions process and maintaining public trust in the university's standards. This aligns with the ethical obligation to treat all applicants equitably and to uphold the academic standards of the institution. An incorrect approach would be to grant an accommodation based solely on the student's emotional appeal, without verifying the legitimacy of the circumstances, or ensuring that the accommodation itself does not undermine the examination's purpose. This fails to uphold the regulatory requirement for fair and consistent application of examination policies. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the request outright, without any consideration or exploration of potential, policy-compliant accommodations, which could be seen as lacking in empathy and potentially violating institutional guidelines on supporting students facing genuine difficulties. A third incorrect approach would be to deviate from established procedures by creating a novel accommodation without proper authorization or consultation, which risks setting a precedent that could lead to future inconsistencies and challenges to the examination's validity. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the specific regulations and guidelines governing entrance examinations at Nazarene University. They should then gather all relevant information, assess the situation against these established policies, and consult with relevant stakeholders if necessary. A decision-making framework should prioritize adherence to policy, fairness to all applicants, and the maintenance of academic integrity. Documentation of the process and the rationale for the decision is crucial for accountability and future reference. Question 11. Assessment of an applicant's understanding of academic integrity principles is crucial during the entrance examination process at Nazarene University. Consider a scenario where an applicant is asked to submit a short essay on a given topic. Which of the following approaches best demonstrates an understanding of academic integrity and ethical conduct expected of a prospective student? Option A. Submitting an essay that includes significant portions of text copied directly from online articles and books, with a general statement at the end acknowledging the use of research materials. Option B. Submitting an essay that contains some original thoughts but also includes copied sections, accompanied by a disclaimer that the applicant is new to academic writing and may not have fully mastered citation techniques. Option C. Submitting an essay that incorporates ideas from various sources, with some paraphrasing, but without explicit and detailed citations for each piece of information. Option D. Submitting an essay that is entirely the applicant's own work, with all ideas and information properly attributed to their original sources through accurate citations. The correct answer is D. Submitting an essay that is entirely the applicant's own work, with all ideas and information properly attributed to their original sources through accurate citations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles of academic integrity and ethical conduct expected of students at Nazarene University. The challenge lies in discerning between acceptable academic practices and those that constitute plagiarism, a serious offense that undermines the learning process and the credibility of academic work. Careful judgment is required to identify the most appropriate response that aligns with the university's commitment to academic honesty. The correct approach involves recognizing that submitting work that is not entirely one's own without proper attribution is a violation of academic integrity. This approach correctly identifies the need to acknowledge all sources of information and ideas, ensuring that the submitted work reflects the applicant's own understanding and effort. This aligns with the core ethical principles of academic honesty, which are implicitly or explicitly part of the regulatory framework governing university admissions and student conduct at institutions like Nazarene University. Upholding these principles is crucial for fostering a culture of learning and research built on trust and originality. An incorrect approach that involves submitting work with minor paraphrasing, but without full citation, fails to meet the standard of academic honesty. While some degree of paraphrasing is acceptable, the absence of proper attribution still constitutes a form of intellectual dishonesty, as it presents others' ideas as one's own. This violates the ethical obligation to give credit where credit is due and misrepresents the applicant's actual contribution. Another incorrect approach that involves submitting work with significant portions copied directly from external sources, even with a general acknowledgement of using research materials, is a clear instance of plagiarism. This demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding or disregard for academic integrity. It not only misrepresents the applicant's abilities, but also undermines the purpose of the entrance exam, which is to assess individual aptitude and potential. Such an action would be a direct contravention of the expected standards of conduct for any prospective student. A further incorrect approach that involves submitting work with a disclaimer stating that the applicant is new to academic writing, and therefore some parts might not be original, while acknowledging a lack of familiarity with citation, is still unacceptable. While it shows some awareness of potential issues, it does not absolve the applicant of the responsibility to submit original work or to make a genuine effort to understand and apply citation principles. Universities expect applicants to demonstrate a commitment to learning and adherence to academic standards from the outset. The professional reasoning process for similar situations involves a thorough understanding of academic integrity policies, ethical guidelines, and the specific expectations of the institution. When faced with a task that requires original work, professionals should always prioritize honesty, transparency, and proper attribution. This involves clearly identifying one's own contributions and meticulously acknowledging all external sources of information, ideas, and data. If there is any doubt about the appropriate method of citation or the definition of plagiarism, seeking clarification from academic advisors or referring to university guidelines is essential. The overarching principle is to ensure that all submitted work is a true reflection of one's own knowledge and effort, thereby upholding the integrity of the academic process. Question 12. Which approach would be most appropriate for an applicant to take if they observe another candidate appearing to cheat during the Nazarene University entrance exam? Option A. Discreetly inform the invigilator or examination supervisor about the observed behavior. Option B. Offer to help the other applicant if they seem to be struggling with the exam material. Option C. Directly confront the other applicant and demand they stop cheating. Option D. Ignore the situation to avoid causing any disruption or potential conflict. The correct answer is A. Discreetly inform the invigilator or examination supervisor about the observed behavior. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the core principles and ethical considerations relevant to academic integrity and the university's admission standards, as outlined by the Nazarene University's entrance examination framework. The challenge lies in discerning the most appropriate and ethical response when faced with a situation that could potentially compromise the integrity of the examination process. Careful judgment is required to uphold the values of honesty and fairness that are fundamental to academic institutions. The correct approach involves acknowledging the potential for academic misconduct and proactively seeking clarification and guidance from the appropriate university authority. This demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and adherence to the examination regulations. Specifically, It aligns with the implicit requirement of the Nazarene University entrance exam to uphold academic integrity by not engaging in or condoning dishonest practices. The ethical justification stems from the principle of honesty and the responsibility to act in accordance with established rules and guidelines. By seeking guidance, the applicant signals their respect for the examination process and their intention to comply with its standards. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the situation or to attempt to proceed without addressing the ethical dilemma. This failure to act demonstrates a disregard for the examination's integrity and the university's standards. Another incorrect approach would be to directly confront or accuse the other applicant without evidence or proper procedure. This could lead to unnecessary conflict and potentially violate the rights of the other individual, as well as bypass the established channels for reporting academic irregularities. A third incorrect approach would be to offer assistance to the other applicant in a way that facilitates cheating. This directly contravenes the principles of academic honesty and would be a clear violation of the examination's ethical framework. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying the potential ethical or regulatory issue. They should then consider the established procedures for addressing such issues within the relevant framework. In this case, the Nazarene University entrance exam guidelines, seeking clarification from supervisors or designated authorities, is a crucial step in ensuring that actions are compliant and ethically sound. This systematic approach helps to prevent missteps and uphold professional integrity. Question 13. Implementation of a new, more rigorous Nazarene University entrance examination has led to concerns among some prospective students about their preparedness. A group of parents approaches the admissions office suggesting that the university offer optional, paid preparatory workshops that would cover the exact format and types of questions that will appear on the exam, arguing this would help ensure more students meet the new standards. Option A. Agree to offer the paid preparatory workshops, emphasizing that this will help more students succeed and improve the university's overall admission statistics, thereby enhancing its reputation. Option B. Suggest that the university allow candidates to bring pre-approved study materials into the examination hall, arguing this would level the playing field by giving everyone access to resources. Option C. Reject the proposal outright, explaining that offering such workshops would compromise the integrity and fairness of the entrance examination by providing an undue advantage to those who can afford the extra preparation, and that all candidates must be assessed on an equal footing according to the published examination guidelines. Option D. Propose a compromise where the university offers free, general study guides, but declines to provide specific details about the exam format or question types, citing the need to maintain the exam's validity. The correct answer is C. Reject the proposal outright, explaining that offering such workshops would compromise the integrity and fairness of the entrance examination by providing an undue advantage to those who can afford the extra preparation, and that all candidates must be assessed on an equal footing according to the published examination guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve institutional goals. The university entrance exam is designed to assess a candidate's genuine aptitude and preparedness. Introducing external assistance, even if perceived as beneficial by some, fundamentally undermines the validity of the assessment process and the credibility of the university's admissions. The core ethical principle at play is fairness to all applicants. Allowing any form of unauthorized assistance creates an uneven playing field, disadvantaging those who rely solely on their own abilities. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the established examination regulations and upholding the principles of academic integrity. This means ensuring that all candidates are assessed on their own merit, without any form of external support or prearranged assistance. This aligns with the ethical duty of examiners and administrators to maintain the integrity of the examination process, as mandated by the Nazarene University's commitment to academic excellence and fair evaluation. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams universally emphasizes impartiality and the prevention of any form of cheating or undue advantage. An incorrect approach would be to facilitate or overlook any form of prearranged assistance for candidates. This could manifest as providing advance notice of specific question types or topics beyond what is publicly communicated, or allowing candidates to consult unauthorized materials during the exam. Such actions directly violate the principles of fairness and academic honesty. Ethically, this constitutes a breach of trust and a dereliction of duty, as it compromises the integrity of the admissions process. Regulatory frameworks for examinations explicitly prohibit such practices, as they render the assessment meaningless and can lead to the admission of unqualified individuals, thereby damaging the institution's reputation. Professionals tasked with administering university entrance exams must employ a decision-making process rooted in a strong understanding of ethical principles and regulatory requirements. This involves prioritizing fairness, transparency, and the integrity of the assessment. When faced with potential breaches or ambiguous situations, the default position must always be to uphold the established rules and ethical standards. This requires vigilance in monitoring the examination environment, clear communication of rules to candidates, and a firm stance against any deviation from the prescribed procedures. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the examination accurately reflects each candidate's capabilities, and that the university admits students who are genuinely prepared for its academic programs. Question 14. The efficiency study reveals that while student enrollment has increased, there are significant delays in processing applications and a lack of adequate academic advising resources, impacting student satisfaction. The university administration is preparing its annual report for prospective students and stakeholders, which approach best reflects responsible academic reporting and institutional integrity. Option A. Focus exclusively on the positive enrollment figures and attribute any perceived delays or resource limitations to external factors beyond the university's control, without acknowledging the study's specific findings on these issues. Option B. Present a balanced overview of the efficiency study's findings, detailing both the positive aspects of increased enrollment and the identified areas of concern regarding application processing and academic advising, and outline a clear, actionable plan for addressing these specific inefficiencies. Option C. Downplay the significance of the identified inefficiencies by suggesting they are minor issues that do not substantially affect the overall student experience or the university's academic standing, and propose only superficial adjustments to address them. Option D. Emphasize the positive trend of increased enrollment and highlight successful academic programs, while briefly mentioning that efforts are underway to streamline administrative processes and enhance advising services without detailing the extent of the current inefficiencies. The correct answer is D. Emphasize the positive trend of increased enrollment and highlight successful academic programs, while briefly mentioning that efforts are underway to streamline administrative processes and enhance advising services without detailing the extent of the current inefficiencies. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to present a positive institutional image and the ethical obligation to accurately report findings, even if they are unfavorable. The university entrance exam context demands that candidates demonstrate an understanding of academic integrity and responsible reporting. Careful judgment is required to navigate the pressure to downplay negative results and uphold the principles of transparency and truthfulness. The correct approach involves acknowledging the study's findings, including the areas of inefficiency, and proposing concrete, evidence-based strategies for improvement. This aligns with the ethical duty of academic institutions to pursue knowledge and self-improvement. By transparently addressing the inefficiencies, the university demonstrates a commitment to academic rigor and responsible stewardship of resources, which are foundational principles expected of any educational body. This approach fosters trust among stakeholders and sets a precedent for honest self-assessment. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on highlighting positive aspects while omitting or minimizing the identified inefficiencies would be ethically flawed. This misrepresents the reality of the situation and fails to address potential problems that could hinder the university's long-term effectiveness. Such an omission violates the principle of honesty and could mislead prospective students, faculty, and governing bodies about the institution's true operational status. Another incorrect approach that involves fabricating or exaggerating positive outcomes to mask the inefficiencies is a direct breach of academic integrity and ethical conduct. This constitutes academic dishonesty and undermines the credibility of the university and its entrance examination process. It prioritizes superficial appearances over substantive improvement and demonstrates a lack of commitment to genuine progress. A further incorrect approach that involves dismissing the study's findings without proper investigation or justification would also be professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a disregard for data-driven analysis and a reluctance to engage with constructive criticism. It suggests an unwillingness to adapt or improve, which is contrary to the spirit of continuous development expected in an academic environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to truthfulness and transparency. Professionals should first thoroughly understand the findings of any study or assessment. They should then consider the ethical implications of their reporting, prioritizing accuracy and completeness. Developing a plan for addressing identified issues rather than ignoring them is crucial. This involves seeking solutions, engaging relevant stakeholders, and communicating findings responsibly. The ultimate goal should be the betterment of the institution based on honest appraisal. Question 15. During the evaluation of an applicant's file for the Nazarene University entrance examination, a student requests a modified examination format due to a diagnosed learning difficulty, providing a letter from a medical professional outlining the condition, but not specifying the exact nature of the modification needed. The admissions committee must decide how to proceed. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and ethically sound course of action? Option A. Grant the student's request for a modified examination format immediately, as indicated by the medical letter, to ensure inclusivity. Option B. Proceed with the examination as scheduled, but instruct the invigilator to allow the student extra time without further consultation or documentation. Option C. Deny the request outright, stating that the entrance examination is standardized for all applicants and no modifications can be made. Option D. Engage with the student and relevant university support services to determine appropriate, documented accommodations that align with university policy and do not compromise the integrity of the examination. The correct answer is D. Engage with the student and relevant university support services to determine appropriate, documented accommodations that align with university policy and do not compromise the integrity of the examination. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for accommodation and the university's obligation to maintain academic integrity and fair assessment practices. The challenge lies in balancing support for students with diverse learning needs against the need for standardized evaluation that accurately reflects a student's mastery of the subject matter. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any accommodations provided are appropriate, equitable, and do not compromise the validity of the entrance examination. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented review of the student's request, considering established university policies on academic accommodations and disability support. This approach prioritizes a fair and objective assessment of the student's needs in relation to the examination's objectives. It aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and equity, ensuring that all candidates are assessed under comparable conditions while also acknowledging legitimate needs for support. Specifically, Nazarene University, like most academic institutions, would have established guidelines for handling such requests, likely involving a dedicated committee or office responsible for reviewing documentation and determining appropriate accommodations. This process ensures that decisions are not arbitrary, but are based on established procedures and evidence. An incorrect approach would be to grant the accommodation request solely based on the student's assertion, without proper verification or consideration of university policy. This fails to uphold the principle of fairness to other candidates who are not receiving similar special treatment. It also risks compromising the integrity of the entrance examination by potentially providing an unfair advantage. Another incorrect approach would be to outright deny the request without any form of review or dialogue, which could be discriminatory and fail to acknowledge legitimate needs, potentially violating institutional policies on inclusivity and support for students with disabilities. A third incorrect approach would be to implement an accommodation that fundamentally alters the nature or difficulty of the examination, thereby invalidating the comparative assessment of all candidates. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific university policies and procedures for academic accommodations. 2. gathering all necessary documentation from the student. 3. Consulting with relevant university support services, e.g., disability services, academic advising. 4. Objectively assessing the request against the examination's learning objectives and assessment criteria. 5. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind it. 6. Communicating the decision clearly and respectfully to the student. Question 16. System analysis indicates that during the Nazarene University entrance exam, an invigilator observes a candidate exhibiting significant distress, repeatedly looking at their paper with a blank expression and appearing on the verge of tears. The candidate then subtly attempts to catch the invigilator's eye, seemingly seeking help. Based on the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines for the Nazarene University entrance exam, what is the most appropriate course of action for the invigilator? Option A. Discreetly provide the candidate with hints or direct answers to the questions they are struggling with to alleviate their distress and ensure they complete the exam. Option B. Allow the candidate to continue struggling without intervention, hoping they will eventually find the answers themselves to avoid any perception of favoritism. Option C. Politely inform the candidate that they must work independently and that no assistance can be provided with the exam content, while continuing to monitor for any further irregularities. Option D. Offer to discuss the exam questions and answers with the candidate immediately after the exam concludes to help them understand the material they missed. The correct answer is A. Discreetly provide the candidate with hints or direct answers to the questions they are struggling with to alleviate their distress and ensure they complete the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical imperative to maintain academic integrity and uphold the reputation of Nazarene University. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to assist a struggling student with the absolute prohibition against facilitating academic dishonesty. The university's entrance exam regulations, as per the specified jurisdiction, strictly forbid any form of cheating or unauthorized assistance. Therefore, any action that compromises this principle, even with good intentions, would be a direct violation. The correct approach involves upholding the university's academic integrity policies by refusing to provide direct answers or assistance that would constitute cheating. This aligns with the ethical duty of an invigilator to ensure a fair and unbiased examination environment. Specifically, the regulations for the Nazarene University entrance exam mandate that invigilators must prevent any form of academic misconduct. Providing answers, even to a student in distress, would directly contravene this rule, undermining the validity of the examination and the qualifications it represents. Ethically, this approach prioritizes fairness to all candidates and the integrity of the institution. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with the answers. This action directly violates the Nazarene University entrance exam regulations against cheating and unauthorized assistance. It compromises the fairness of the examination for all other candidates who have prepared diligently. Ethically, it is a breach of trust and professional conduct, as it undermines the purpose of the entrance exam, which is to assess genuine knowledge and aptitude. Another incorrect approach would be to allow the student to continue without intervention, hoping they might figure it out. While this avoids directly providing answers, it fails to address the immediate situation and could be interpreted as negligence in upholding examination standards if the student is clearly struggling due to external factors or attempting to cheat. The regulations require active prevention of misconduct, not passive observation. A third incorrect approach would be to discuss the exam content with the student after the exam to help them understand. While post-exam tutoring is a legitimate educational activity, doing so immediately after an entrance exam, especially when the student was observed struggling, could be perceived as an attempt to retroactively legitimize their performance or provide an unfair advantage, thus indirectly compromising the integrity of the entrance examination process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's examination regulations and ethical codes. When faced with a student in distress during an exam, the invigilator must first assess the situation to determine if it constitutes a potential breach of regulations. If the student is merely experiencing anxiety or difficulty, offering general encouragement or directing them to university support services, if permissible and appropriate within the exam context, might be considered. However, Any direct assistance with exam content or answers is strictly forbidden. The invigilator's primary responsibility is to ensure the integrity of the examination process, which necessitates adherence to all rules and ethical guidelines. Question 17. Performance analysis shows that a prospective student, who is the nephew of a prominent faculty member, has not met the minimum academic qualifications stipulated for entry into the African Nazarene University, ANU, Bachelor of Commerce program. The faculty member has approached the admissions officer, requesting that the student be allowed to sit for the ANU entrance examination despite not meeting the prerequisite academic threshold, citing the student's potential and eagerness to learn. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions officer to take in this situation, strictly adhering to the African Nazarene University's entrance examination regulatory framework? Option A. Allow the student to sit for the ANU entrance examination as a special case, based on the faculty member's recommendation and the student's perceived potential. Option B. Advise the student to enroll in a bridging course offered by a private institution, and then consider admission to ANU without requiring the entrance examination. Option C. Politely inform the faculty member that the student must meet the stated academic entry requirements before being eligible to sit for the ANU entrance examination, and offer to guide them on how the student can meet these requirements for future application cycles. Option D. Suggest that the student apply for a diploma program at ANU, which has less stringent entry requirements, rather than pursuing the Bachelor of Commerce program. Correct answer is C. Politely inform the faculty member that the student must meet the stated academic entry requirements before being eligible to sit for the ANU entrance examination, and offer to guide them on how the student can meet these requirements for future application cycles. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived academic needs and the university's established admission policies. The admissions officer must navigate the pressure to accommodate a potentially deserving candidate while upholding the integrity and fairness of the entrance examination process. This requires careful judgment to ensure that any decision is based on established criteria and not on personal bias or external influence. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's existing academic records and a direct comparison against the stated minimum entry requirements for the African Nazarene University ANU entrance examination. This aligns with the ANU's regulatory framework for admissions, which prioritizes objective assessment of academic qualifications as a prerequisite for examination eligibility. This approach ensures fairness and consistency for all applicants, adhering to the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity as enshrined in the university's admission guidelines. Incorrect approach is analysis. Admitting the student directly based on the recommendation of a faculty member, without verifying their academic qualifications against the stated entry requirements, constitutes a failure to adhere to the ANU's admission policies. This bypasses the established procedural safeguards and could be seen as preferential treatment, undermining the fairness of the admissions process. It also fails to uphold the principle of objective assessment, which is a cornerstone of academic admissions. Suggesting the student take a preparatory course and then be admitted without sitting for the entrance examination, even if they perform well in the course, is also an incorrect approach. This deviates from the mandatory requirement of passing the entrance examination as stipulated by ANU's admission regulations. It creates an alternative pathway that is not officially sanctioned, potentially setting a precedent for future exceptions and compromising the standardized nature of the entrance assessment. Recommending the student to apply for a different program that might have lower entry requirements without first assessing their eligibility for the intended program is also professionally unsound. While exploring alternatives might be a secondary consideration, the primary duty is to assess the applicant's suitability for the program they initially applied for, based on the established criteria. This approach avoids the direct assessment required by the ANU's entrance examination framework. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and regulations. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing the university's admission criteria and procedures. 2. Objectively assessing all applicants against these criteria. 3. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them. 4. Seeking clarification or guidance from superiors or relevant committees when faced with ambiguous situations or potential conflicts. 5. Maintaining confidentiality and impartiality throughout the process. Question 18. Benchmark analysis indicates that a prospective student applying for admission to Africa Nazarene University has approached an admissions advisor, admitting to struggling with the entrance examination preparation and asking for hints on specific questions they might encounter, implying a desire for direct assistance beyond general study advice. The advisor is aware that providing such specific guidance would constitute academic dishonesty. How should the admissions advisor ethically and professionally respond to this request, adhering to Africa Nazarene University's entrance examination framework? Option A. Inform the student that due to the sensitive nature of the exam, no further discussion on preparation strategies can be entertained and end the conversation. Option B. Provide the student with a list of topics that are likely to be covered in the exam and subtly hint at the types of answers expected for common questions, framing it as helpful guidance. Option C. Lightly decline to provide any specific hints. Clearly explain the university's strict policy against academic dishonesty and plagiarism in the entrance examination, and offer to direct the student to general academic support resources available for preparation. Option D. Advise the student that, while direct hints are not permissible, they can share their current study materials with the advisor for a review to identify areas of weakness. The correct answer is C. Politely decline to provide any specific hints. Clearly explain the university's strict policy against academic dishonesty and plagiarism in the entrance examination, and offer to direct the student to general academic support resources available for preparation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation of academic integrity and the university's responsibility to uphold fair admission standards. The core issue is balancing the need to assist a prospective student with the imperative to prevent academic dishonesty and ensure that all applicants are evaluated on their own merits, as per Africa Nazarene University's entrance examination guidelines. The pressure to admit a student, especially one with a perceived potential, must not override fundamental ethical principles. The correct approach involves a direct and transparent communication with the prospective student regarding the university's policies on academic integrity and the consequences of plagiarism. This aligns with the ethical duty to uphold honesty and fairness in the academic process. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of the Africa Nazarene University entrance exam regulations, which implicitly demand original work from all candidates. By clearly stating the university's stance and offering legitimate avenues for improvement, like academic support resources, the advisor acts ethically and professionally, safeguarding the integrity of the admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with direct answers or to subtly guide them towards specific answers without disclosing the university's policies. This action constitutes academic dishonesty by proxy, undermining the purpose of the entrance exam as a measure of individual aptitude and knowledge. It violates the ethical principle of fairness to other applicants who are undertaking the exam honestly. Furthermore, it contravenes the implicit understanding that entrance examinations are designed to assess an applicant's independent capabilities, a cornerstone of academic evaluation at institutions like Africa Nazarene University. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request and proceed without addressing the ethical dilemma. This inaction fails to uphold the advisor's responsibility to guide and inform prospective students about academic expectations and ethical conduct. It also risks allowing a potentially dishonest application to proceed, which compromises the integrity of the admissions process and the university's reputation. This passive stance does not align with the proactive ethical engagement expected of university staff. Professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the ethical conflict, the desire to help versus the obligation to uphold academic integrity. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and guidelines, understanding the specific rules governing entrance exams and academic conduct at Africa Nazarene University. 3. Prioritizing ethical principles, recognizing that fairness, honesty, and integrity are paramount. 4. Communicating clearly and transparently, informing the student of the rules and consequences. 5. Offering appropriate support, directing the student to legitimate resources for academic improvement. Question 19. Benchmark analysis indicates that prospective students often seek guidance on preparing for the Nazarene University entrance examination. A student approaches you, a university representative, and asks for specific topics that are likely to appear on the exam, as well as any sample questions from previous years to help them focus their studies. You are aware that the university has strict policies against providing direct assistance that could compromise the integrity of the examination. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and ethically sound course of action? Option A. Provide the student with a general overview of the subject areas typically covered in the entrance exam and recommend official study guides or university-approved resources for self-preparation. Option B. Decline to provide any information or assistance, stating that all preparation must be done independently without any university guidance. Option C. Offer to create a personalized study plan for the student that includes predicted exam questions based on your knowledge of the curriculum. Option D. Share specific past examination questions and offer to review the student's answers to ensure they are on the right track. The correct answer is A. Provide the student with a general overview of the subject areas typically covered in the entrance exam and recommend official study guides or university-approved resources for self-preparation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's academic integrity standards with the ethical considerations of assisting a prospective student. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting the scope of permissible assistance without crossing the line into academic misconduct or misrepresentation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the support provided is genuinely helpful for the student's preparation, while upholding the integrity of the entrance examination process. The correct approach involves providing general guidance on the types of knowledge and skills typically assessed in the Nazarene University entrance exam, along with resources for self-study. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible because it empowers the student to prepare independently, respecting the autonomy and fairness of the examination. It aligns with the principles of academic integrity by not offering direct answers or shortcuts, and by ensuring that the student's admission is based on their own merit. This respects the regulatory framework of the university's entrance examination, which aims to assess a candidate's genuine aptitude and knowledge. An incorrect approach that involves offering specific past exam questions or providing direct answers to potential exam topics fails to uphold academic integrity. This constitutes a form of academic dishonesty, as it circumvents the intended purpose of the entrance exam, which is to evaluate a student's independent learning and critical thinking abilities. Such an action would undermine the fairness of the admission process and could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, thereby compromising the academic standards of Nazarene University. It also violates the implicit ethical obligation to maintain a fair and equitable assessment environment. Another incorrect approach, which is to refuse any assistance whatsoever, might seem safe but misses an opportunity to ethically guide a prospective student. While avoiding misconduct, it can be perceived as unsupportive and may not align with the university's broader mission of fostering educational access and guidance. A more balanced approach is to offer appropriate, ethical support. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's academic integrity policies and ethical guidelines. Professionals should first identify the core objective of the request and the potential ethical implications. They should then consider how to fulfill the underlying need, e.g., preparation for an exam, in a manner that is both helpful and compliant with regulations and ethical standards. This often involves providing general information, resources, and guidance on study strategies rather than specific answers or direct assistance with exam content. A critical self-reflection on whether the proposed action could be construed as facilitating academic dishonesty is paramount. Question 20. Benchmark analysis indicates that prospective students applying to Nazarene University for undergraduate programs are evaluated not only on academic merit, but also on their alignment with the university's ethos. Considering this, which of the following approaches best reflects a candidate's understanding of the entrance examination's purpose and their readiness for academic life at the institution? Option A. Expressing a general desire to attend a reputable university and a vague interest in a broad field of study, without specific details about academic qualifications or program choice. Option B. Presenting a comprehensive overview of academic achievements, highlighting specific subjects relevant to the intended course of study, and articulating a clear, well-researched rationale for choosing Nazarene University and the chosen program. Option C. Providing an exaggerated account of past academic successes and fabricating specific projects to impress the admissions committee with perceived exceptional abilities. Option D. Emphasizing a wide range of extracurricular activities and leadership roles, with a brief mention of academic performance to showcase a well-rounded personality. The correct answer is B. Presenting a comprehensive overview of academic achievements, highlighting specific subjects relevant to the intended course of study, and articulating a clear, well-researched rationale for choosing Nazarene University and the chosen program. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles of university entrance, specifically as they relate to Nazarene University's admission process. The challenge lies in discerning the most appropriate and ethically sound approach to presenting one's qualifications and aspirations within the context of an entrance examination, which is designed to assess suitability for higher education. Careful judgment is required to align personal presentation with the university's stated values and academic standards. The correct approach involves a direct and honest presentation of academic achievements and a clear articulation of how these align with the chosen course of study at Nazarene University. This approach is right because it adheres to the principles of academic integrity and transparency, which are paramount in any educational institution. Specifically, it demonstrates respect for the examination process and the university's commitment to admitting students based on merit and genuine interest. This aligns with the implicit ethical guidelines of any reputable university entrance process, which prioritizes truthfulness and a demonstrated capacity for learning. An incorrect approach that involves exaggerating past academic performance or fabricating experiences would be ethically unacceptable. This failure stems from a breach of academic honesty, a core value in higher education. Such an action misrepresents the applicant's true capabilities and undermines the fairness of the selection process. Another incorrect approach, such as focusing solely on extracurricular achievements without demonstrating academic preparedness, would also be professionally flawed. While extracurriculars are valuable, the primary purpose of an entrance exam is to assess academic suitability. Failing to adequately address academic qualifications would demonstrate a misunderstanding of the university's priorities and the purpose of the entrance examination. A third incorrect approach, which is to express a vague or generic interest in attending the university without specific reasons or a clear academic direction, would be professionally weak. This indicates a lack of research and commitment, suggesting the applicant may not have a well-defined educational goal, which is crucial for success in a university environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a thorough understanding of the institution's mission, values, and admission criteria. Applicants should reflect on their own strengths, weaknesses, and aspirations, and then present this information truthfully and strategically, demonstrating how they align with the institution's goals. This involves honest self-assessment and a clear, well-reasoned presentation of one's suitability.